Okay, drum roll. You guys can pound on the table. It's okay. All right, there we go. Number 1.
Can I go first?
Sure.
I don't want to but
Okay, Gerald's number 1 game of all time is
Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say really quick. So, pretty much everything you said. I mean, it's the first big adventure. I mean, I played Zeldas before that.
Yeah.
Link's Awakening, obviously the original ones on the NES, Link to the Past. But, man, that game is so good. Just the big open world, seeing it for the first time. I played Mario 64 before that, but when you're walking, like you said, after you talk to the owl, hopefully you didn't press A again, and you walk into that field for the first time, you're like, holy crap, this is humongous.
And then when it would go night and all the skeletons start coming out, and you're like,
I just got my sword, what are you doing?
Right, yeah.
Oh, that game is just awesome. And then,
so exciting.
like you said, talking to your friends about, like, wait, you have 5 hearts? I only have 4. Oh, you didn't get the heart pieces, man. You got to get these heart pieces, and talking about different strategies and all that kind of stuff. And
did you backflip through the area? I've always felt like backflip.
It was always faster.
So
Yeah.
I'd turn around and I'd backflip through everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you move more quickly
It
when you
seemed to
back.
be. I don't know if it really.
I've done that in a couple games where you roll. You constantly
Yeah.
roll just because it feels like you're going
feels
fast.
better.
That's fine.
And the time travel mechanic is probably the best time travel I've seen in any video game, where it's just completely different. It's the same exact places, but it's just different how it's changed. And
All the beans, you gotta throw the beans down and grow like plants.
and then you time travel, and now it's a plant.
Yeah.
It's just
That's super
stuff
cool.
like that is just amazing.
Yeah, and I remember recently I saw a video. Someone 3D rendered, I think with the VR headset, the entire scene of what I forget the.
Oh, they rendered it in Unreal 4 engine.
It looked
Unreal Engine.
gorgeous. I'm like, please make this game.
It'll never happen, but
I know.
it looks great.
It is really, really cool. But okay, so real quick, obviously, I don't think Majora's Mask is going to be yours or yours.
No.
So, again, I'm not a huge Zelda is not my number 1. Why is Ocarina? Was it a better game, or is it just Majora's Mask had different
Majora's
components?
Mask was a worse game.
No, that's not true. But it was very
Majora's
very
Mask
different.
was hard as hell
It's
for
hard.
one.
It's completely different in Zelda.
dark
That's
as
what
hell.
I like about it.
and
though.
so dark.
But it's also frustrating because if you didn't get to a point in that, okay, so in that game, there's actual time, and it's 3 days, and at 3 days the world ends. So if you don't get to like a checkpoint within those 3 days, you have to start over, and you do
Start from day one.
Well, like you played a song to reverse time back
Right.
into the
So,
first.
But and then you got
didn't-
songs later on be like, you can jump to day, you can jump a day, right? So you're like, if
speed
I
up
miss
and-
something on
yeah.
day 3, you can at least jump to the 3rd day.
Right, but if you didn't get like a temple completed in those 3 days, then you just had to start the temple back
Well, I
over.
think
Not
One
just that, but like to get all the masks, which are obviously a big part of the game.
super difficult.
Oh my god, like the mask trading stuff. You have to get a very
was-
specific, like this post guy running from this point to this point, and you have to get there at a very specific time.
That's what's awesome about
to
it,
trade.
though.
Yeah, it's a great
because
game.
it changed the whole thing that everybody
Yeah.
they have a routine instead of they're just standing in one spot. They're doing
Yeah.
stuff.
There
That's-
was a fourth dimension to that game, which was cool because Legend of Zelda added the third dimension to Zelda's game, and Majora's Mask added the fourth dimension of time. Even though there was time travel in Zelda, I mean, in
wasn't
Ocarina
like-
of Time,
yeah.
it wasn't an active time where it didn't matter if you were either an adult or a kid, and they were two, standard times. Majora's Mask was dynamic; it moved as you
People were
played.
living in the world.
Yeah.
Well, see, the one thing the one of the mechanics I hate of most games is that ticking clock. You have to get something done at a certain amount. It just creates unnecessary tension.
That's
So-
what it's for, though. It's
I
attention.
know,
of it
but
all.
that's why when I remember hearing about the game, I was like, nope, not for me. But I was just interested to find out why that game is not considered highly ranked as it is compared to Ocarina.
It felt more repetitive. It felt more repetitive than Ocarina of Time did.
Definitely.
Ocarina of Time didn't feel repetitive at all. Everything felt new and fresh, especially because it was coming off of the first 3D Zelda game. And Majora's Mask just kind of, you do something and then you go back in time and you see the same things. And maybe your goal is different this time, but you're going through the same motions at first and you're seeing the same
bad
cutscenes,
guys.
the same this and that. And so it just felt like you kept living. It felt like Groundhog's Day Zelda. And you're doing,
Oh,
you know what
okay.
I'm saying? You're
'Cause
doing
that's the
something
mechanic.
different. You're
That's the mechanic.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. You're progressing through the game and you've got new skills. You can get to new places and stuff, but it felt like Groundhog's Day.
The game.
and the game.
Man, it's dark, that
it
story.
Yeah, it's a dark story.
dark.
A lot of
But-
people think he died in it,
It was fun though. I mean, it was a good game. I remember actually, to play that game, I borrowed your expansion pack because I
You
didn't
needed an
have
expansion
one.
pack to play
Yeah,
that.
so he let me borrow the game and the expansion.
Remember?
I
you
remember
had N64.
that was the
It
first
had-
day I was like,
it was a memory
came with
expansion you
Donkey
had to
Kong.
have.
Oh, you had to have
You
additional
had to
memory
have-
for this game?
Yep. And
Oh,
I
come
remember
on.
thinking, Man, Chuck is the coolest guy in the world because he not only let me borrow this game, but he let me borrow the expansion pack, which means he can't play any other game that needs an expansion pack until I give it back.
Did it go on the back of the controller, like the
No,
rumble?
No, it went
Front
into
of
the
the
front of the
N64, in front of the
64.
cartridge.
We actually had a couple of them because
Oh, that's why I let him borrow.
Okay. That makes more
Blockbuster, you
sense
could
now.
rent Donkey Kong 64 and it came with it. So we would just take.
Oh, you would
Kong
just
back.
keep it. All right, well, you're the reason they went out of business, Chuck.
We
Way
got
to go.
Rumble
more
packs from
sense now.
Star Fox.
Oh, my
Now,
gosh.
did you buy? You said you bought Ocarina of Time, right?
Yeah, first day.
Gold or regular?
No,
Do
You
you
didn't
buy
get a gold one?
I had
a
the
gold
I
one.
mean, that was like.
I regret trading those in to this day, but I had the gold one. I had the gold of the NES one. I had the gold Majora's Mask.
And you trade all those in?
Yeah.
Oh, that is shameful. See all these systems here?
Yeah.
Nothing gets traded in from Mr.
Yeah, these
Peterson.
are all
Yeah, I know.
Jordans, by the way.
I was only a kid. I was only a kid, but
Including
It's the
clearly,
pea yellow.
yeah, the
Yeah,
pea
I got very
yellows.
yellow Super Nintendo, but everything
But
else
it
is
stays
pretty
nice and
minty.
gray, right?
I don't
Well, they said it's
understand.
different plastic. So again, this is great. This is all visual stuff that people on the
You
podcast.
have to come look at the YouTube video if you want to get these great visual effects.
All right. Well, that was
that's my number one.
Okay.
So whoever
All right.
wants to go next, I just needed to.
You want me to go?
Go ahead, buddy.
My number one. No surprise to you two. I'm glad Chuck's here because maybe he's actually played it. My number one game of all time, Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation 1. Absolutely my favorite game of all time. When we did this list, I already knew what my number one was going to be. Easy. And I'm sure you guys knew as
Yeah,
well.
easy.
Yeah, we knew that.
That
too.
game has such a
It's come
powerful.
up like 7 times on the podcast.
I know. All I ever talk about is Metal
Yeah,
Gear
we all knew.
yeah. No, but it's something about that game with being able, again, going back to telling narratives and things like that. It had the ability to tell such a great story with not believable, but interesting characters. It had, a component of when like one of the characters dies, Sniper Wolf, like I almost started tearing up. Like it had those moments that felt like a movie. It was the first game that had the feeling of like games can do more than, be, although Final Fantasy had it a little bit. I forget which one it was. One of the ones that traded over. Anyways, but the mechanics, I even told you guys where you had to like unplug from one port into the other port. so
That's crazy.
So that the
Psycho Mantis.
yeah,
yes.
Psycho Mantis.
You
There's
read your save file and everything, It was
Yeah.
awesome.
talking about that.
yeah, and
before.
like there's another part where you have to call someone on a codec and you have to call their frequency and they're like, you're like, I don't know their frequency. It's all printed on the back of the game. That's the only way it's printed. That's where you had to find it.
It's in the
It's-
instruction booklet. I think,
no, it was
yeah?
actually on the back. Like like
the
they had
cartridge, is that
snapshots
on
of
the
the
case?
game. Yeah, on the case. And
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah,
It was
you had
like
to
a
call
picture
Meryl.
of it,
Yeah, it was Meryl. It was like
That's
1480
And
something.
do they tell you to
No,
do that?
well,
No,
eventually they tell you, like, if you spend an hour trying to figure it out, then they're like, maybe you want to look at the back of the game, which is kind of funny that the
Kodak
game.
pop like, stop being stupid, figure it out. Here you go.
But that game just had so many unique, and of course it spawned this amazing series. One funny story, and this is way back when I was dating my wife. You know when you date somebody, and this is way back in the day, you'd stay on the phone for like all night.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't want to just tell me if. So
You say
Did you
goodbye.
fall asleep? No.
That's-
I'm
no,
still awake. I'm
yeah.
still awake.
You
Okay,
say
so I did this with my wife Alyssa, and we're sitting on the phone, and she's like, "Tell me a story. Tell me something I don't know about you." And I was like, "Have you ever heard of the game Metal Gear Solid?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Let me tell you a story." I told
Hope
her.
you're not tired.
I told her the entire like Gray Fox, the Ninja, the Liquid Snake, everything. And then like she was like, "Oh, what is this like a movie?" I'm like, "No, it's a game." She's like, "That's a game." And then to this day, I'm like, "You remember when I told you that?" She's like, "Yeah, she remembers everything." She's like, "Oh yeah, Gray Fox was in Zanzibar Land and then became the Ninja, the Cyborg." And I'm like, "How do you remember all this?" It's awesome. So again, that's my favorite game of all time is Metal Gear Solid, and it spawned my favorite series of all time. So my number one game, easy. All right, Chuck.
I'll go. So mine is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past.
Oh wow.
I'm a classic man. I love the old Zeldas. People are gonna hate me for saying this. I think Ocarina of Time is overrated. I don't love the puzzles in it.
Don't even get me
Sometimes I
started.
think a matter of having a bow and arrow and seeing something on the wall and knowing to shoot it. How's that a puzzle? I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
do
can do
love
that Link to the
Ocarina of
Past.
Time. I do. It's not that I don't love it. Just
But the hook
Link to
shot
Past,
and like being able, like you had certain material items you could only hook shot to. You couldn't just hook shot to anything.
Okay.
Like,
We're gonna have a nerd fight here.
I'm just saying, like only wood. You couldn't just hook shot into some stone. Okay.
And I mean, arguably the time travel, they already did it with the Dark and Light World.
true,
It's
yeah.
very, very similar.
The mirror,
way that whole
right?
works. Yeah, you had the mirror where you could go back and forth. I mean, the first Zelda was so amazing, and then they added a story in the second,
Yeah.
in Legend of, or in Link to the Past. I remember getting a Master Sword. You're walking down, and there's animals coming out
Yeah.
of the bushes, and you
It's
know
like
you
that
got
scene
your little
from Snow
squirrel
White,
and bunny. Yeah, you like really felt epic to get this sword. You know, it was great. And then you go and beat what's it, Angheim? I don't even know how to say that.
The first game, right?
Yeah. And then the whole thing goes to the Dark World, and it's a whole brand new game for you.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people complain that it held your hand a little bit, because it did. It told you where all the pendants were and stuff, but the amount of secrets involved with it to get all the hearts, to get all the...
Yeah.
You know, I remember trying to figure out how to get the flute. You had to get the shovel, and that guy would appear on the tree stump, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. I mean...
Those
I
are-
remember seeing it at Toys R Us, like a video of it before it came out, and all the cannonballs coming out as you're going through the level. It's
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite.
Get the
game.
Pegasus boots.
I can
right?
play it
Or
all
something.
day. Yeah, you had to knock the book off of the shelf. I mean,
Yeah.
I can just walk through the whole game right now if we wanted to.
See, I feel bad because like I didn't have an SNES growing up, so I played that game on an emulator after the game came out, or after I
Yeah,
played
years
probably
and
Ocarina
years
of
and
Time.
years and years.
I feel so bad because that game is so good. Not as good as Ocarina of Time, but anyway, it's so good, and I feel bad that I didn't get to play it when it first came out.
I'm in the same boat as you, Gerald. Never
Yeah.
had an SNES, so I don't have the memories to join it. I did play it later on an emulator. It was a great game, and even the newer version of that game on the 3DS, whatever that new one's called, it's like the same.
Between
it's like
Worlds.
A Link
Yeah,
Between Worlds.
that
It's like
is
a
so
similar
good.
style. I mean, it's the
it's a
same
sequel.
map.
It is. It's a sequel to it.
And it was a great game too. But because Ocarina of Time was my introduction. No, I played the Zelda on regular Nintendo first, but my introduction to a story matched with it.
To Hyrule, you know.
Plus,
Yeah.
because I never played the SNES one first, the time travel thing was brand new to me. I didn't
Exactly,
know,
same
it was a brand new thing to me. So, there's some nostalgia and some love that is beyond the game involved in Ocarina of Time.
Right.
But I wish I would have played it at that time too. I wish I would have known you when we were 8
so you can
instead
borrow
of
your
16, so I could come over and play it. But we didn't meet until
I
we
like
were
it if
older.
we had like a time machine. You'd do like one, like go back, kill Hitler, and then two, go hang out with Chuck.
I
when
would have
you're eight
met
years
Chuck at a much earlier age. That would have been a goal of mine.
That's awesome. Great. That's an excellent pick. And that's actually, I think, one of the oldest games that we've had on this list so far. I think did anybody have a Nintendo game?
Let's
No.
see. No, Warcraft 2 may have been before.
No, I think the Super Nintendo was before that.
That one.
Anyways, Jordan, what
Yeah,
is your
you're
what
probably right.
what is your number one game?
Mine is a game you guys may have never even heard of. It's called Legend of Legaia.
Yes, I've heard of
Yes,
it.
you
Legend
never
of-
heard of
that one? Okay, PlayStation 1 game. It is a turn-based RPG, and
So right up your alley, Jared.
absolutely love this game. So my introduction to this game, I was over at a friend's house, and his older brother. It's funny because I just ran into this older brother's wife today at Target and talked to her for a while.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just
Small world.
coincidental.
Yeah, that's weird.
But I remember watching him play this, and it was so exciting. I wanted to play, but he was not going to let me play. But it was just so exciting to watch this. And then when I got my hands on this game, I just couldn't let it go. It's just your typical turn-based, except for you actually got to tell which your moves are. You didn't just select punch. You actually got to do a combination. So you do like left arm, right arm, leg.
Oh, wow.
And then up, down. There are different combinations, and if you chose the correct combinations, you get a super move.
Right.
And then you
Against that
memorize the
specific
super
enemy?
moves. No, not against the enemy.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of
It'd
like a
be
Street Fighter
up,
thing.
Up, down
okay.
is like hyper kick, but you wouldn't know that unless you tried up, down. So it encouraged you to try all these different combinations because you'd unlock them. And then at first you could only do like 3 moves, like 2 kicks and a punch if you wanted, or whatever it is. And then but as you grow, you get this longer combinations you could do, and you could do like 8 moves.
That's
So
awesome.
it'd be like up kick, down kick, right left, up kick, right, and it would be this super crazy hyper punch kick combo roundabout. You're like Chuck Norris out there.
Yeah.
And you're just getting these really cool moves. It also had the aspect like in Final Fantasy where you could bring in like your extra creatures to attack. So you had
Yeah.
like magic that you could, and it was kind of like the red mage, where as you fought people, you could absorb them, and then they became one of the characters you could be.
Oh, interesting.
So you could turn into bad guys and use them against other bad guys for the battles. It was a super huge map, which in PlayStation 1 they were able to do some awesome things with maps, just make huge worlds. I just loved this game to death. I played it like a year ago all over again, and I loved it all over again. There was 3 main characters you could be, and then they each had like a I think it was called the Suru, which was like their magic piece, the arm piece that they could talk to and stuff. And it was just an incredible game.
Who made this game?
The details guy, come on, bro.
I'm sorry, man. I didn't have a
Square
PlayStation
Enix.
either.
It was
I can't
probably
remember.
Square Enix. It was one of the like JRPGs.
It was just
so-
Square, I think, at the time.
Oh, that's back then, yeah.
Yeah, so they were just battling the mist. There were like arenas. There was it was just like the same stuff you see these days with the Final Fantasy games and stuff. But it was like the first version that I was introduced to. I just love that game. It's not a popular game, but it's the best.
Yeah, I gotta look that up.
Now, I asked the community, and basically, a lot of the same games that we've already said they've picked. Ocarina of Time, I think, was picked like 3 or 4
done.
times
Well, it should be.
out of the time. What's interesting, though, is that I don't think any of us picked like a... Did anyone pick an NES game, a classic Nintendo game?
No.
I didn't.
Let me look at my list again. I don't think I did.
I mean, I figured Super Mario Brothers 3 was going to be on someone's list. Then and it's specifically on here.
see, I have a list. The way I made my list is I took the 5. I took NES, SNES, N64, PlayStation, and PC games, and I took 5 of each of my favorite of those.
Yeah,
Super Mario 3 was my favorite of the NES games.
but it didn't make the top 5.
But it doesn't make the top 5 of all games ever.
So here's a couple other interesting ones here. Super Mario RPG. Didn't
Oh,
make
that
any...
was if we would have done Super Nintendo, that would have been on there.
Okay.
That's number 2 on my Super Nintendo list.
And then, I mean, basically on here again, Half-Life 1, people also talking about Counter-Strike. So, I mean, a lot of the same games. I think what's interesting, and this is what I was actually doing when I was going through this list, one thing you didn't mention, arcade games. I thought about this. What about The Simpsons? I played that game so much. I loved that game. The beat-em-up Simpsons
Yeah,
game.
the 4
Or
players.
X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
Mine
Yeah.
was
Yeah, but it's-
Street Fighter 2.
Arcade games never held my attention for long because obviously you're limited by the amount of money.
Me and
in your
Gerald were
wallet.
poor.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, Time Crisis
Sorry,
2 was
bro.
like, I probably spent tens of dollars on Time Crisis 2 at Blackbeard's in Clovis, California. And it's just, they were fun while you're playing it, but
Yeah.
not enough where you're sitting there for hours at
Yeah.
home with this game.
Yeah. Now, another question I had is, do you guys consider pinball machines video games? Because I was talking about this with my wife today.
No.
No,
Why?
No.
I don't either.
Because there's no video.
Yeah,
phone.
where's the
I mean,
video at?
Well, there's a little screen that you type
That's
in
a
your
display.
initials.
Your score?
No.
Might as well be just like
Does that
basketball.
mean basketball exactly?
It's
Yeah.
like-
Well, that's
Well,
totally,
scoreboard.
totally different skill. And I mean, there's obviously skill involved with those games, but it's a lot different than
Now
a
there
video
are
game.
some video game pinball games that I would count.
Well, yes.
there
Oh, like
was
Devil's
a
Crush,
pinball
yeah.
game that came with like Windows 98 or
Windows
something,
XP.
Video game board
and that
games.
was
Yeah.
exciting and fun to play. But no, not in general. A real pinball machine it's a pinball game, not a video
It
game.
was a form of gambling at one point.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
You
right.
know they were banned for like years. It's
Pinball?
like
Until it was
the
de-
80s. That
yeah, until it
is
was determined that
how they lived
skills
in the band.
involved. Yeah.
It's not that long ago, really, that pinball's legal to play.
That's
Wow.
interesting. I didn't know that. All right. Well, that's okay. But before we kind of wrap up, do you think there's any game? I think Fallout 4 will probably be somewhere in the top 10 from what I've seen. Is there any game on the horizon that you guys think will crack your top 5 anytime soon? I know Jordan's probably hard, right? Because you.
No, I don't play. Well, I don't have any of the new systems except 3DS. I'm happy that the new 3DS comes. I want to play the new Zelda, but I don't think it'll be anywhere close to Ocarina of Time or anything. I hope there's a Zelda game in the future.
Well,
They're
there,
developing one for the Wii U.
Yeah, I will probably buy a Wii U or
Just for
borrow
that?
someone's Wii U to play that game. But yeah, I hope there's a Zelda that beats it. But no, not for me.
I mean, they have had Skyward Sword.
I played
Twilight
every
Princess.
I
They were all
played
good,
every
but
Zelda,
not nearly as
not
good
as
as-
good as.
yeah.
Well,
I'm not gonna say never, but
It's
as
hard.
you get older, like it changes things.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have the time to do it like you used to. That
And you don't have
I
the.
don't know.
Oh my
yeah,
god!
it would take something.
well, that's why I think VR might do it.
And yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
like I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna say no, but I'd have to lean towards no
like
for
the
sure.
Oculus or something. If
Yeah.
something totally absorbs you and it's something we've never seen before, but it's hard to bring that to us from, like I said, like N64 is where a lot of my favorite games come from because we never seen anything like
Yeah,
it.
and it was
Right.
graphics was a big
And-
thing back then, and now graphics like everything looks great.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say. And a lot of my games, I think the oldest game on my list was 1998. So I have all those fond memories, but they've been replaced by this period of time because I think even Fallout New Vegas was 2010. I mean, that's not that long ago, and I think Fallout 4 is probably going to overtake Fallout New Vegas just because from what I've seen. But there are games that I've played now, like Last of Us. I think someone from the community also said Last of Us. It's a fantastic game, but I wouldn't want to play it again. It was like watching like 12 Years a Slave. Like you don't want to, or like Schindler's List. You don't want to keep watching that movie. Like you see it once, it's great, but it's like, man, I gotta take a break. You know what I mean? So that's that's why those games, for some reason, they're great narrative, but I just can't put them on the list just because of, I can't
That
replay
was why
them.
Myst didn't make the list for me.
I was surprised. You didn't have really any point and click games.
No, well, it's so hard. I do have a couple of my Kyrandia, Hand of Fate was on my list of in the PC games, but you have to have Mario 64. You have to have Ocarina of Time. You have to have, for me, Legend of the Legaia. I mean, I live for that game. I remember going to Oregon with my family, and my cousin had that Legend of the Legaia game, and I just sat. Everyone else was out like camping and having fun, and I was sitting in the bedroom playing Legend of the Legaia. I love that game. So those games have to make the list in my book. So it made some other ones fall off. But the reason Myst didn't really make it, I took it out kind of last minute, was because I can't play it again.
You already know the puzzle.
Yeah, I know it. And
You
that was,
just
I think,
do it in the beginning.
I mean, if we hit you in the
can do it
head
in like
hard
5
enough,
minutes, right? And yeah, I can beat that game in literally 5 minutes. And it came. I think I was like 94. I think that's even older.
That's
than-
early.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's
an
early
old game. But they're coming out with a new one, which is exciting. The makers of the Cyan, the people who used to work for Cyan,
They're gonna come
look
out
at
and make
that.
it?
I knew a manufacturer name. No, I just saw on the Kickstarter. They kickstarted a new game, and they're coming out with something that's called like Obstruction or Obscure or something. I don't know. I didn't pay that much attention. But I'm excited to play a new version of Myst. Anything that's Myst related, I'm excited to play. But to play, you can't play them more than once.
Right.
And so that's why they fell off my list.
Yeah, like I said, there's a bunch of games that definitely would have. I think the gap between 5 and like 9 is not as great as between 5 and 1. You know what I mean? So like I think we should actually do
6 or 10.
We're
I'm
gonna do a
telling you,
6
it's
or
gonna
10
be
and go
awesome.
opposite as everybody.
It's gonna be
went.
awesome.
That's how contrarian we are. All right, well that's our top 5 video games of all time. Taken months to prepare. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
It was hard though. It was very difficult.
I challenge anybody to make their own 5. Actually, you know what? In the YouTube comments, if this video goes up, which I'm hoping it does, put your top 5 video games of all time. Put them in the comments down below. I can actually point down below. That's what I'm doing on the podcast. And definitely subscribe to our channel. Check us out. We have a podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud. And before we wrap up, I want to give another special thanks to 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, our sponsor. Check out all their great stuff at 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And thanks for listening, viewers. Bye.
See ya.
Later.
Enjoy yourself.